What's up, everybody? Good evening. It's Carpo here again. Just felt like making a few different videos tonight. This one in particular was the original intention, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some existential shit here, if you will. I've had some interesting synchronicities lately, I guess you would call them, and I thought I would share one interesting experience I had, not synchronicity related, but I've been looking a little bit more into my old papers, and I found some stuff on evolution and discussing the fact that no matter how much I've researched evolution and Darwinian theory as well as religions, I've found that there's value in both, but that they're both incomplete. And I think that many religious figures will agree that many religions are incomplete, as well as many Darwinians will agree that many of the theories of Darwin were incomplete. One of those happens to be the idea that natural selection is a matter of random mutation. And I don't want to go into too much detail. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, and I am no scholar, but through the research I've done in my own life, as well as my own experiences, I've been very careful about what I say, about saying, well, you know, humans are this or humans are that, because I don't know for sure. But one of the issues that came up the other day, I feel like I do have a say on, and I thought I would put it out there. Now, Bret Weinstein, if you don't know who he is, he's from Evergreen College here in my state, Washington. He got basically forced out of his school because he had some different views on men and women. The same types of issues that Jordan Peterson had at his school up in Canada. Both of these guys basically got more or less recognized and famous because they're psychologists that talk about differences between men and women and differences in cultures that got them in trouble. Not that they're wrong and not that they're completely right, but that's what happened. And so Bret, he's an interesting fellow. He is a Catholic, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But Jordan Peterson, I believe, he's always trying to promote not religion per se, but putting religion in a context where it makes it more acceptable to people. But I'm not going to go into that aspect of it. I wanted to talk about the discussion between Bret Weinstein and Richard Dawkins. And I was fascinated because I didn't even realize they'd had a debate. And then I came across this thing and where somebody was talking about it, and I was like, what? And I'm not sure. I think it was more recent, but anyhow, whenever it was, I watched it today, and then I went and I read a couple of Reddit forums and threads about the, debate, discussion, whatever you want to call it. And I was pretty much appalled by the fact that a majority of the people in the comment section were obvious intellectuals. I can't stand the type. I'm sorry. I grew up in a world where, my friends and I are slightly crude and we joke around, but we're still smart enough to be able to talk about important issues without making each other feel dumb for slight differences or miscalculations about mathematical models. People get way off topic and they end up arguing and debating not for the sake of the argument. They missed the whole point. The whole point of the discussion that I pulled out of the debate discussion was that Bret was basically saying, well, religion is an evolutionary benefit to mankind because it helps them bond together. One of the most fascinating, not just bond together, but let me give you an example. Bret, said something about how, basically Richard Dawkins, the atheist, he says that mankind, since priests in the church are celibate and they've taken a vow of celibacy and not to have children, then they're basically not promoting their own lineage, they're not propagating their own genes, right? And that is kind of against the point of nature. And then the rebuttal was that basically, I think he said it himself, Dawkins, he said that the priests themselves don't have kids. All they do is just sit up there and tell all the other Catholics to have kids, or have more kids. And I thought about that, and I said, well, I totally understand that point. You know, if you believe that the church is your tribe, then if you're not having children, but you can promote 20 people to have 4 or 5 children, then you're actually doing God's word. You're doing better for the religion. You're doing more than you could having your own kids. Now, this is, of course, just some, you know, existential discussion that is very subjective to the individual, whoever decides to talk about it. You know, I'm no intellectual, and I'm no expert on these things, but they talked about something called extended phenotypes. And I'm not going to go into detail because it's complex shit, but an extended phenotype would be like, instead of just a genetic trait of an animal, it's a genetic behavior. I considered it just like instinct. It seems like a fancy word for instinct. Like if a beaver builds a dam and blocks and makes ponds, the extended phenotype is that creation of ponds, which over generations, you know, helps other beavers survive. It's part of their survival process to build dams. And he was saying that, that humans create religion in the same way that beavers build dams, basically. That we do it because we pass it on down the line, and that it helps others. It's just that they never got to the point of how it helps others. So, you know, for one thing, they say, well, yeah, Catholics have a lot of kids, so what? How does it really benefit mankind is the discussion they never got into. And a lot of people don't like Brett because he's apparently, you know, a Catholic himself. I'm not sure if that's true. I heard it. I don't ever look at what religion these people are until somebody else points it out, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have to, you know, at least acknowledge it, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm looking at the information a person provides, and I find Brett Weinstein to be an amazing speaker, and he has some very good points. His idea, and this isn't something that's anything new, but you know, the Darwinian theory is lacking in the fact that evolution is not blind, that evolution doesn't just have a random mutation that is favored, but rather that these mutations are explorations of the genes. In other words, a salmon doesn't accidentally take the wrong stream. It chooses as kind of what you would call an anomaly, right? It chooses a different stream. And that nature wants this. And that would explain why humans are conscious. I mean, this is all like super deep shit, but it's stuff that, you know, we all think about to one degree or another. Why do we do what we do? Why do humans do what they do? And understanding that can help us immensely in our own lives. Does belief help or hinder is, I think, the big question. When it comes to religion, is believing in a God, in a religion, helping or hindering? And that really is just like, it reminds me of a joke I read when I was 9 years old in some outrageously offensive joke book. It said, is sex better than pot? And it says, it depends on the pusher. And I guess that's the same thing with anything. It depends on the religion, it depends on the person utilizing the tool. It depends on many other factors, but if a religion's going to help a person, it's going to help them cope with life as is. If it's hindering, it means that it's causing us to have, you know, commit genocide against our neighbor because of the fact they believe in a different God. But many of the questions Brett was asking was the same thing about that. You know, is genocide something that's inherited? Is it something that's, in other words, genetic, something that benefits mankind? Maybe it's we're wiping ourselves out for reasons we don't understand, or is it just ignorance, plain stupidity, or misplaced hostility? Psychology can't answer all these questions. None of us can, but all of us together can at least discuss it. I'm no expert on it, but I do like talking about it. One of I think the main premise of the discussion that was really overlooked was not why do people have beliefs, but why do beliefs stick around? And thank God, at the very end of the discussion, Brett had one last question he could ask Dawkins, and he said, what is, you know, that's basically what he asked, you know, why do beliefs stick around if they're just an anomaly? because something that's an anomaly or random can just come and go. Somebody has a belief, nobody cares. Why do people listen to religious people? If somebody was running around preaching that, you know, something that wasn't benefiting us, or we didn't believe, and, you know, if it wasn't benefiting us, this is the reason why, a lot of the reasons why religious folks use that as a reason to say, hey, look, our religion must be true because so many people have believed it for so long. But that's a fallacy. That doesn't make the religion true. What it does is it shows that there's an aspect of human consciousness that causes us to yearn for that and to find some sort of a solace and community within that. So, my belief is that religion gives us a sense of community, a sense of contact and connection with others, but it also gives us a written value system, because almost all belief systems have values within them, and they are written down, and this is what you do and what you don't do. And a lot of folks would say that's controlling, and many times it's been used that way. It's just like a tool. You know, a religion itself could be used as a weapon or as a tool. And it gives us shared values, so we can say this person's probably not a thief, and this person's probably not going to, you know, an adulterer, going to, you know, take advantage of my wife. That, you know, it's simple things that we all need to live with. Today in the West, we have a lot more rights. We can call the cops on people, and we can file lawsuits. That wasn't always possible. We really had to protect ourselves. And that kind of, you know, wariness endured. So the final thing I want to say about it is that faith gives us hope. It gives us hope that there's more and something else besides just this life. I think that's the main thing that everyone knows. The most obvious factor of belief systems, religion. I don't nearly convey it as eloquently as these other guys do, but I find their discussions fascinating. I personally think that Richard Dawkins is correct in many ways, but I find him dry, I find him boring, I find him to be completely unaccepting of the possibilities of anything different, because he wants to just, you know, stop in 1800, say, this is the old belief system, and this is Dawkins, you know, that historically, you know, evolution was correct, and we're done. Genetics, there are some questions that just aren't answered. The main question, and if any of you are evolutionary biologists, I'd love to hear it. Why does evolution occur? Why does emergence occur? Why do we have similar traits among all these animals? Why do things want to become more complex? And of course nobody can answer that question accurately. You know, entropy is the nature of space. It's the nature of existence. But planets form, people form, creatures form, bacteria form. You know, some of the questions can't be answered. So it's only natural that belief is going to dominate for one reason or another. Why? I don't know. That's the question I'm proposing here. I almost envy people who can believe something that they have no proof of, and that's good for them, good on them. I enjoy talking with faithful people, so feel free to post a comment. Thank you to everyone who does, and even if you have a religious comment to leave, I'm totally cool with that. I'm curious to know mainly why a person can justify believing in a God when so many people have died in the name of that God. And if, you know, even if it's a peaceful religion, I guess I want to know how it's helped people, because it's an interesting subject. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you to my friends, family, and everybody in peace and love.